Welcome to the True Demon Lord Show. I am the True Demon Lord Franco, and today we are going to be looking at how to get started with Chaos Daemons. So this will be a video more so aimed at newer players and people getting into the game and wanting to start with demons, or people moving from a faction and wanting to get into demons as their second or third, fourth faction or whatever. Or another chaos player who plays another chaos army, whether it be one of the chaos legions or chaos knights, and already have some demons in their collection from allying and want to expand on that collection and start actually playing demons as a solo faction. So we are going to look at, basically the general idea and style of the army, different play styles and lists, or list builds that you can run, and then also talk about how to get started with the faction in general. So how to start your collection or how to expand on an existing collection, key units, so key units what you might want to get if you haven't already got them, that will either help you casually or competitively. So before we get into the rest of the video, if you like the content that we do, if you enjoy it, leave a like and subscribe. It helps out massively and it is hugely appreciated, and it allows the channel to keep on growing because we are growing incredibly fast within the first 8 months now, and we are just growing and growing and growing. Especially recently, we just keep going up in subscribers, which is awesome and very much appreciated from myself. And then if you really like the content, maybe consider becoming a true denizen, which will have you joining the membership here on YouTube, and will get you some extra benefits like joining the member exclusive Discord, which will get you more of an open line of communication to myself. So I'll be a lot more active in there than I am on the normal Discord or Facebook and all that kind of stuff. It will also allow you to have a say in what videos and content we create for the channel, having a say in future lists and units that I take for events, and then a whole other bunch of different benefits, which is all described in the membership thing. So, without further ado, let's get straight into it. So, firstly, if you're considering joining demons, you kind of need to know what we do, right? So we are a very interesting army as far as being faction goes. So we are kind of 4 armies in one. And I know there's a few factions that kind of you look at and think about when you kind of think about different armies maybe in one, like Tau, you have crew, and then you have the battle suits and all that kind of stuff, just as an example. But demons truly are a combination of 4 different armies. So obviously you've got your 4 gods. You've got Khorne, Tzeentch, Slaanesh, and Nurgle. All 4 have their different kind of playstyles, strengths, and weaknesses. Nurgle is all about toughness and resilience, and debuffs as well. Slaanesh is speed, kind of death by 1,000 cuts. It won't hit you like a hammer, but it will stab you with like a scalpel. Khorne, on the other hand, is basically a sledgehammer. It's very simple. It wants to hit you in the face really hard. Done. And Tzeentch is kind of, again, similar to Nurgle in the fact that maybe not as tough due to toughness or wounds or stuff like that, but good invulns across the board, 4-up invulns everywhere. More of a ranged focused play style, and a little bit of trickery. Now, obviously, at the moment in 10th edition, we are sitting on the 1 index detachment. And because of that, you are a little bit more limited. Like, yes, you have the units that have all their, they are themed to the god that they follow or that they are. But, at the moment, there is no other god detachment. So playing a kind of mono-themed list is a little bit harder. Now, before we go any further into this, I am going to say this, as if you're getting into the faction, I do think it's something you should know. There are a lot of rumors that demons are not going to be getting a codex again because of other reasons, whether it be they don't want to support the model line or anything like that anymore. And the thing is, these are rumors. I have to be careful what I say because I do know a lot of things. Thankfully, and luckily, I am lucky to kind of get this information. All I recommend is, if you do want to get into the faction, do it because you just love the models and you really want to play it. as a real long-term project, I'm going like a year plus time. If you don't really want to play something that could be going the way of the dodo, going towards 11th edition and further, then maybe kind of double think getting into the faction. And the last thing I want to do is put people off the faction. What I do is I try and build the faction, promote the health of it. I do what not many other people do, and that's just try and keep this faction in the best state it can be. So the last thing I want to do is wade people off. I just also want to put that disclaimer out there, rather than you jumping in and then in a year or 2 years' time, you know, it's different for players like myself that have been playing the army for 17 years. I have a lot of stuff at this point to the that if it goes the way of the dodo for me, fine. I've had more fun for 17 odd years, whatever. But that doesn't matter. We will be talking more about that kind of stuff in December, and we will get to that when we get to that. I can't say anything more on that. So, demons, what do we do? So we do a lot of deep strike manipulation. And what I mean by that is, every army in the game, when they come down from deep strike, come down 9 inches away. Now, obviously, anything coming to strategic reserves and then come on the board edge, only certain units have the deep strike ability. In demons, everything has deep strike. Just off the bat, everything has deep strike. And like I said, every army can come down 9 or more inches away. Other armies, or some armies, have a stratagem or a unit has an ability where they can come down 3 or more inches away. Obviously, you cannot charge or anything like that afterwards. But yeah, so there are some kind of manipulation with that. We have something that is incredibly unique, and that's the fact that not just do we have a 3-inch deep strike stratagem that we can use on anything, but we can also deep strike 6 inches away and still charge. So we have the Shadow of Chaos, which is an area effect. So your deployment zone is always classed as being within your army Shadow of Chaos. And then if you control half or more of the objectives in no man's land and or half the objectives in or more in your opponent's deployment zone, which will normally only be 1, at the start of any phase, for the rest of the phase, the Shadow of Chaos is in effect in that area of the board. And when your units land slowly in your army's Shadow of Chaos, they can come down 6 more inches away rather than 9 inches when they come in from deep strike. Now, all your greater demons and Be'lakor, so basically all your big monsters, all have a shadow bubble around them, a 6-inch aura. And obviously for the greater demons, this will only affect the units that are of their god. So a Bloodthirster will only affect Khorne demons, Ground Cleavers will only affect Nurgle demons, etc., etc. So that means you can bring units down within range of them, either, normal troop choices or other greater demons of the same god, and then come 6 inches away and still charge. So that is one of our biggest, if not our biggest strength, which is awesome. And obviously we can go uppy downy, like we can pick units off the board at the end of our opponent's turn and bring them back down in our turn with a stratagem. And again, like I said, everything deep strike. So that is probably our biggest strength. Something else is we are generally a very fast and mobile army. So we have a lot of units that move 12 to 14 inches. Like I said, we can go up and down a lot. We can deep strike all over the place. So if you're looking for a faction that can kind of get to wherever it wants to get to on the board, get to most of your opponent's army, and then force your opponent to always have to be thinking, because with demons, once, like with most armies, once stuff is down, it's down, then your opponent just has to watch where the units themselves are. With demons, your opponent not just has to worry about the units in front of them, with their speed, they can kind of get around. But then they've also got to worry about any space they leave behind them, because if your opponent leaves you a nice gap, you can drop down with, say, a greater demon, and then start bringing stuff around that greater demon to then charge. So, if that type of very fast mobile, making your opponent constantly have to think about screening and move blocking is kind of what you like, then with this, again, one of our biggest strengths. We do have a lot of small point scoring units, so things like flamers and screamers, flesh hounds, fiends, even nurglings, all small and fairly point efficient. The scoring means you can do a lot of you can take quite a few units that are just there to score you points and screen out as well by just being positioned on the board. And then, of course, the biggest draw, I think, for this faction, especially to newer players, is the big smashy monsters. So all your greater demons and Be'lakor, generally mostly good in combat, or resilient. They kind of do one or the other, or a medium mix of both. Unless it's Shalaxi, who just does both really well. And so, yes, and of course, seeing big smashy monsters on the board is cool, especially when it's surrounded by, your little weird looking demons and stuff like that. So overall, we have a very interesting aesthetic, because again, like I said, you're kind of playing 4 factions in one, because all the Sinesh stuff looks very different to all the Khorne stuff, which looks different to the Nurgle stuff, which looks different to the Tzeentch stuff. And again, the idea of, your kind of big monsters with your troop units, and then your more fast, speedy, very unique looking units, things like Screamers, which are stingrays, basically, demonic stingrays, and Fiends, which are like horsey, anteatery things. And it's just very cool looking, very cool aesthetic. And when I first started playing the faction, like I went into a GW originally to start Lord of the Rings, because I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan. I happened to have walked in there on the week the first ever Demon Codex got released in 2007, 17 years ago. And on the table was, the old mini metal Fate Weaver, and he was only about 3 to 4 inches in height, whereas now he's like 7, 8 inches or whatever it is. The old Be'lakor, which was tiny, which you couldn't even use in 40k at that point. It was just on the table. Because he could be used as a Demon Prince proxy, and then some of the old pink horrors. And I kind of looked at them and I was like, they're cool. I want to play them. And of course, you could use them in fantasy or you could use them in 40k. But fantasy came on square bases and rank and file, whereas 40k obviously is what it is now, circle bases, separate coherency. And that appealed more to me, even though I'm not much of a sci-fi person. I'm not really big on sci-fi. I prefer my more fantasy genre and setting. The bases is really what drives me in 40k. And like I said, demons are the army I've been playing since I started playing the game. And I've dabbled with some other bits, some other chaos factions and that. But 95% of my time playing this game, and 95% of my thousands of games at this point, have been with demons. And that's because the aesthetic is just awesome and cool. So, what type of play styles do we have? So we have what is generally referred to as Monster Mash. And I mean, it's in the name. It's a list where you focus heavy on the big monsters. So a Monster Mash list is generally anything from 4 greater demons or large monsters, because Be'lakor is not a greater demon technically, up to, there is a list in 2000 points that has 7 of them. Is it the most competitively viable? No. Is it fun and cool? Yes. So the Monster Mash list again focuses heavily, there we go, we speak English, heavily on monsters. So again, you're putting the majority of your points into your big smashy monsters. And, unlike a lot of armies, our big monsters are fairly expensive. Like you can start at 230 with your normal Graze and Clean one and work your way all the way up to 425 points as of recording with Shalaxi. So your monsters are going to sit between that mid 200 to mid 300 point range on average. And so taking 5 of these guys is already going to rock you close to 2,000 points. So yes, and kind of the most common way to see this list is, like I said, 4 to 5 monsters of, generally great on Claim 1, Be'lakor, Keepers, Bloodthirsters, Lords of Change, Shalaxi, Scarbrand, those type of guys. And then some smaller units to kind of head the list out and give you some scoring capability. So Fleshhounds, Screamers, the MSU scoring units. And then speaking of MSU, that is the next playstyle you can look at, which is MSU. And MSU stands for minimum sized unit. So that is basically the unit just taken as it is. For example, Flamers come in minimum sizes of 3, same as Screamers, same as Fiends, same as Blood Crushers. Fleshhounds come in units of 5. So you're basically taking as many of these small minimum sized units as possible. 3 units of Screamers, 3 units of Flamers, 3 units of Fleshhounds, 3 units of Screamers. And the idea is you're just having a lot of board presence, kind of darting across the board, screening, blocking, tagging. When I say blocking and tagging, moving in the way of enemy units that can't fly, so you can stop them getting to certain parts of the board, whether it be to stop them from getting onto objectives or stop them from getting to more key units. And tagging is, again, charging into units that you know aren't going to kill the unit you're charging with, or even just charging a bunch of units into something so they can't kill all of it. And again, just locking that unit down. If it can't fall back and shoot or fight or charge, then it's going to be stuck there. And again, just trying to lock the board down and then just be able to score as many or all the secondary and primary points as it possibly can. Now, a playstyle that we haven't so much spoken about here is Horde. And Horde is just basically loads of models. It was a playstyle Demons used to be able to do, but not really anymore, because again, when you're doing your Horde, you need to be able to really be taking units of 20s. And our general troop choices, which is Bloodletters, Blue Horrors, Pink Horrors, Plague Bearers, and Demonettes, can now only be taken in units of up to 10, sadly, and that doesn't look like it's ever going to change anytime soon. So Horde isn't really something we can run anymore, which makes me sad because it is my favorite playstyle, and not being able to run it does make me sad. Then we have our mono god builds. Here we're talking about mono Khorne and mono Nurgle, as they are currently the best ways to do it. But your mono build is just taking one god. Now, as I said at the beginning of the video, at the moment we are kind of locked into, or we're not kind of locked into, we are locked into one detachment. That may or may not be changing very, very soon. But you're basically just trying to take all the synergies in one list. So Khorne has a lot of different synergies, like the Rim Master, which is one of your character units. It can pick an enemy unit that is visible and within 18 inches of it. Everything Khorne that targets it in the fight phase then gets +1 strength, AP, and damage to their melee attacks. So again, the more Khorne you take, the more you can benefit from that. Nurgle have a similar thing with Rotigus, where he can pick an enemy unit 18 inches and visible to him in the fight phase. Anytime Nurgle stuff targets them, they can get +1 damage. Plague drones, when they shoot at something, for the rest of the turn, anytime anything Nurgle targets them, they get to reroll wounds. So again, trying to maximize the benefits from these abilities and buffs by just going all mono god. And like we've already said, your greater demons have their aura, their shadow aura, which will only affect units of that god. So again, taking as many units of that god allows you to maximize that benefit. And then we have more of a balanced list, and this is a list that's going to kind of balance in between different playstyles, where you take a mix of, say, Khorne and Nurgle, which is a very strong combination, or Nurgle and Slaanesh, or Khorne and Slaanesh, again, very powerful combinations. Or maybe you take 3 monsters and then some MSU, and then bring in some troop units or Plague Bearers or Bloodletters into your list. So again, just going with more of a rounded type of playstyle, taking a bit of a buffet from all over the place. So that's kind of the playstyles, how the faction overall plays and its strengths. So now we're going to look at the kind of best way to start the faction if you're kind of starting from scratch or have very little. And of course, like any faction, we have a combat patrol. Now, our combat patrol is Khorne, like it is a Khorne box. So if outright you are a big fan of Slaanesh or Nurgle or Tzeentch, and that's kind of the route you want to start down, because I started with Tzeentch personally. Most Demon players, it's more so, I don't want to sound like an old man, because I'm not even an old man, but more old school Demon players that have been playing for like 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years, like myself. And most of them, when you ask them, would have started with one god. Whereas now I feel like that's less of a common way to start. You start more mixed. But yes, one god or mono god was kind of more of a common thing quite a while ago. But if you do want to go down that route, which I definitely recommend, if you're not just going at it from a competitive standpoint, if you're not just looking at playing demons competitively, but just in general collecting the army, then I definitely recommend picking your favorite god and going down that direction and route. Now, if Khorne is your favorite god, or if you really like Khorne, then the combat patrol is perfect, because you get a Blood Master, which is a basic character on foot who's really good. You know, he can attach to blood letters. He gives the unit he's attached to +1 to wound in combat and +3-inch movement to their consolidation move. As well as also being a little bit of a beat stick in combat with 5 strength 6 -2 3 damage attacks. You also get 2 units of 10 blood letters. We use 20 blood letters, but they can only be taken in units of 10, so it's 2 units. A unit of 3 blood crushers, and then you get 10 flash hounds, so you can run that as a unit of 10 or 2 units of 5. So that gives you 555 points, which is a really satisfying number to start with. And then obviously, if you want to buy 2 of these, now you've got 1100 or just over 1100 points. Not a bad little start. It will then give you a lot of flesh hounds, a lot of blood letters, a couple little characters, and then also on top of that, you know, blood crushers. And for Khorne, blood crushers are kind of your bread and butter. That's what you want to be focusing on. I think 12 blood crushers is a very good number to have. And then let's look at going forward. So if you do want to go down the combat patrol route because you really like Khorne, or it's just going to be the easiest way to start, then some very good additions will go with that, whether you get it at the same time or you just gradually add, would be a Bloodthirster or Scarbrand. Scarbrand is the named Bloodthirster. As again, your greater demons add a lot of synergy to your lists, and being able to give you your shadow bubbles, and then in this instance, Bloodthirsters give you a +1 to hit for Khorne units within 6 inches of him. Scarbrand gives all Khorne units within 6 inches of him that are not vehicles or monsters +1 attack. Of course, any extra attack ability or any extra attack melee weapons won't benefit from that, like the bladed horns on the blood crushers, because you can't modify the characteristics of extra attacks. But it's still pretty good. And also Scarbrand, flat 6 damage in combat. He's an animal. And then also definitely recommend getting more blood crushers, because 3 blood crushers isn't enough. You can get them in boxes of 6. So if you only get 1 combat patrol, getting 1 box will give you 9 of them. And then I definitely recommend running them in units of 6, because the 3s feel a little bit lackluster. But if you want to get 2 of the combat patrol boxes, and then also then get another box of blood crushers on top of that, that now gives you 12. That's a pretty nice starting point. And then Rem Masters. If you're going down Khorne route or mostly Khorne route, you definitely want Rem Masters, because like we said, they can give you +1 strength, AP, and damage against a target in combat. And that just ups the damage capability from things like blood letters, flesh hounds, and blood crushers as well. Now, some other extra good units that aren't Khorne related that you can add to this, or even just units you can start picking up in like on their own, is of course Be'lakor. He is the centerpiece of the army. He is just, in my opinion, the best model GW have ever made. I have a little bit of sentimental bias, I guess, towards him because he's one of my first models. Generally is my favorite in-law character as well. And I would say every real demon player has a soft spot for Be'lakor. He's our version of Abaddon or Guilliman, or trying to think of other important characters, the Lion, etc., etc. He's our main character. He's also pretty good in combat. In game, his combat's okay. But the thing is, a lot of demon players are very divided on him, because some people don't think he does enough for what he does, for what he is. Some people love him, like myself. He is a bit lackluster compared to how he has been in the past, but he's just a great piece to have in your collection. He looks awesome. He does give you a good amount of synergy. He also has a 6-inch shadow bubble, but unlike the greater demons, whose bubbles only affect units of their gods, his affects everyone. So that gives you a lot of flexibility in your games when you're coming up and down and dropping units out from him, or using stratagems that require some shadow, or being within the shadows. He will allow units around him, if you haven't already got natural shadows in other parts of the board, to be able to get shadows. Another unit that I definitely recommend is the Great Unclean One. Again, awesome looking model. But in general, the Great Unclean One with the enhancement, which we're going to go over in a minute, is one of our strongest units, and in general, Great Unclean Ones are just fairly okay. Plague Bearers are also a fantastic start. I would say they are our best battle line unit. Toughness 5, 2 wounds, 5 up invuln. They have built-in sticky, which means if they are on an objective at the end of your command phase, and you control it, that objective now remains under your control until your opponent comes and takes it, which means you can kind of leave the objective and still control it. And just getting that inbuilt for free is very good. I also recommend Fiends, which is a Suneshi unit. They are our best combat threat outside of the monsters, and Blood Crushers are decent, but with the Fiends, they're beasts, so they can go through walls, they move 12 inches, they are a lot less restricted, they put out a good amount of dev wounds, they're just more consistent in combat than the Blood Crushers as well, so very good unit. And then also Flamers and Screamers, we can kind of include Flesh Hands in this, but because like we're talking about maybe adding this to the Combat Patrol, you already get Flesh Hands in that. Flamers and Screamers are just very good scoring units. Flamers, you know, they move 9 inches, they fly, they have a D6 strength 4, 1 damage flamer on them, so they're very good for Overwatch threat. Very good for the Pushes 3 matchup, like GSC or Elder matchups, but also very good at just dropping down and doing actiony bits as well. And then Screamers move 14. They're on the same basis, so you can also drop them down if you want. But moving 14, 3 attacks, a strength 6, -3/2 damage. -2/2 damage is pretty good. They can actually roll a little bit in the middle, and if they move over stuff, they can do mortal wounds on a 4+ as well. So just some good units to look at adding to your collections or adding to the Combat Patrol when you're starting out. Now, let's look at key units for each god. So we're kind of going to pick some of the better units under each of the gods, and just have a little bit of a rundown on them. So starting with Nurgle, we're going to talk about the Growing Clean again, more specifically with the Endless Gift, which is the Nurgle enhancement. So the Endless Gift is an enhancement that gives the bearer a 5+ for no pain. And then when the bearer is within your army Shadow of Chaos, they gain a 4+ for no pain. Now, of course, the Growing Clean is always in the Shadows of Chaos now, so he will always have the 4+ for no pain, meaning he is toughness 12, 20 wounds, 4+ invulnerable save, and 4+ for no pain. That's just really, really tough. This guy is just so good, so tough, so reliable, so good at just moving to the middle and claiming a part of the board. And you will get a lot of opponents go, I know how tough he is, I focus way too much into him, I'm just going to leave him alone. And then he sits there and scores points, which is awesome. He's also got a great ability where he picks one of your enemy units within 12 inches of him, and it does not need line of sight, and makes that unit -1 toughness. That's very good, being able to turn things that say toughness 10 into now toughness 9. So anything you have that could be strength 5, like Fiends or Blood Crushers, can now win on 5s instead of 4s, instead of 6s, which is just really, really good. And then in combat, he's got some strength 8 -2 D6 damage attacks when lethal hits. So he's not too bad in combat either. So just overall, very, very good. We also have Rotigus, who is your named Great Unclean one. He is T12, 22 wounds, 4+ invulnerable save. No inbuilt feel no pain, which is sad. But he's still very good. He's got a great ability, which is a 6-inch aura. So while any enemy units are within 6 inches of him, they half their movement and they half their OC value. And that's just really, really good. Using a 3-inch deep strike to drop him right down into important parts of the board, being able to cut the OC on one or multiple objectives, allowing you to take them and take them off your opponent is just really, really good. And also slowing down, potential combat threats as well is just very, very handy. And like we already said earlier, he has an ability where he can make your Nurgle units +1 damage against a certain enemy unit. And then in combat, he's not too bad on his own. Like he's got 7 strength, 8 -3 damage attacks, which could become 4 damage if you use the +1 damage ability on himself or on the unit he's hitting. And then we have Plague Drones, which I would not take Plague Drones outside of a mono Nurgle list, because they don't do a lot outside of that, but they are T8, 5 wounds, 5+ invuln, so they're fairly tough. But their ability, again, like we said earlier, they shoot at an enemy unit. If they hit it, anytime your Nurgle units for the rest of the turn target that unit, they can reroll the wound rolls. This is just very good at pushing through that extra damage for Nurgle lists, because again, you're more resilient, so your damage does go down, but Nurgle can grind out and win the war of attrition, because while you are doing damage over time, you're also taking less damage as well overall. So these guys just help you push more damage through, which is really good. And then Plague Bearers, we've already gone over them. One of the best, or in my opinion, the best battle line unit we have. Just very, very good. For Khorne, so we have the Bloodthirster. I am personally not a massive fan of the Bloodthirster. If you're new to the channel, you won't really know, but I'm not a big Khorne fan. And if you are a regular viewer of the channel, then you know exactly about all my hatred about Bloodthirsters and Khorne in general. But Bloodthirsters like they're a big smashy monster. You know, they're throwing 7, strength 40, strength 16, -4, d6 +2 damage attacks. And then in addition, they actually have 2 decent abilities, +1 to hit for all 4 demons within 6 inches of them. So it means if they're -1 to hit, they're still going to be hitting on 2s in combat unless your opponent has more minuses to stack on top. But then also being able to make your other units like Blood Crushers and Bloodlessers hit on 2s or 3s on the Bladed Horns from the Blood Crushers is just really good. And then also he picks an enemy unit at the end of the fight phase within engagement range of him, rolls 8 dice, and every 4+ will do a mortal wound. So if he does what he tends to do a lot and leaves something on just a few wounds, there is a good chance he can still kill it with the extra mortals, or be able to kill a few 1 wound OC2 guys that he piles into, and then having potential to take an objective or contest it. Like, yeah, he's overall fairly decent, really smashy when he does his job. So I don't think if you're taking a Khorne list, they're pretty much mandatory. Then we have the Realm Masters. Again, we've already gone over them. They give you your +1 strength, AP, and damage on a specific unit, just making all your Khorne stuff just infinitely better. Blood Crushers, like we said earlier, bread and butter of your list. For Khorne, tough as 7, 4 wounds, 4 up invuln, incredibly tough. When they charge an enemy unit, or after they charge, you pick an enemy unit they ended in engagement range of, and you roll a dice for each Blood Crusher in the unit. It doesn't matter where the Blood Crusher ended up, so they don't even have to be in engagement range of the unit, just as long as one of the Blood Crushers is. And every 4+ will do D3 mortal wounds. I cannot recommend enough going through and checking the channel out. Because we have a few videos where we talk about Blood Crushers, including a Blood Crusher specific tactics video where we go in depth on some really cool tips and tricks on how to use your Blood Crusher. So definitely check that out. And then Flesh Hounds, they move 12 inches. They can heroically intervene for free, which is not terrible. And they're just really good. They've got such a good base size and speed to be able to move block, being able to just throw them out 12 inches, advance them, spread them out. They're on like small oval bases, which is actually really good for move blocking and screening, and just in general being plus, which is awesome. Then into Slaanesh, we have Shalaxi Hellbane. This is probably very time sensitive. Again, I can't go into it why, but as of right now, she is an absolute animal. She is very expensive. She's 425 points, so she's a little bit non-beginner friendly, but also kind of is, because you can generally send her into most things in the game, and I promise you, most of the time it will die. She gets to reroll charge rolls, and then in combat, hit rolls, wound rolls, and damage rolls in combat. She's got 6 strength 14, -3 d6 +2 damage attacks that have precision, +4 strength 6, -2 3 damage devastating wound attacks. She's also got some pretty good shooting, 6 strength 6, -1 2 damage assault shots, and then also d6 strength 9, -2 d3 devastating wounds and sustain 3 shots, which I've picked up war dogs and armigers and rhinos with just by shooting on its own, and then smash something else in combat. Every time I play into knights and I have her, I'm yet to not kill at least 1,000 points with her against the knight matchup. She's just really reliable at killing things, but again, it is quite expensive. Then we have the Keeper of Secrets, who is definitely one of the newer favorites of mine recently this edition. Outside of the Grace Unclean One and the Endless Gift, the Keeper of Secrets is the toughest Grey Demon we have. The standard Keeper of Secrets is tougher than the standard Great Unclean One, because they are -1 to hit, T10, 4 up invuln, and then they have 3 options for war gear, which is the whip, the knife, or the Shining Aegis, which is the shield. You always take the Shining Aegis generally because It gives you a 5 up for no pain, makes them incredibly much more tougher. We do have a video focused on war gear for your greater demons, which are the best options to take. So check that out because it is very good if you're getting into it and you don't know how to build your greater demon, whether it be model wise or just in game. And then again, they have the shadow bubble. They give +1 AP to all Slanesh units within 6 inches of them, which is really good. It makes themselves -3 on their combat attacks. It makes fiends -3 with their combat. Demonettes -2. So just very good. We have the mask. The mask is a great little lone up character. She's fantastic. She moves 9 inches. She can advance and fall back and charge. She picks an enemy unit at the start of the fight phase, and anytime a model in that unit makes an attack against anything, they have -1 to wound. And then anytime your Slanesh units target that unit, they get +1 to wound. Again, we have done videos focusing on the mask, including one of the more recent videos being the underrated units that we have. She's in that, and we talk about her. We also have a lone focus video where again we talk about her, so check them out. I'm going to keep plugging my videos, but we have so much good videos for beginners to the faction. You should just check them out, honestly, because that's where we go real in depth on all of this stuff. And then Fiends, we've already spoken about them. They move 12. They've got 5 strength, 5 -2, 2 damage, devastate, and wind attacks. They're just really, really good. I mean, they can go through walls and all that kind of stuff. And then we've also got a 6-inch aura of -1 to hit against vehicle non-titanic units, and -1 desperate breakout test, which is just really good at keeping your other units nearby safer. And then we have Tzeentch, which we have the Lord of Change with the Everstave. Sadly, the Lord of Change in general is not great, but the Lord of Change with the Everstave is actually not bad, because the Everstave gives him +6 inches to his range, to his shooting attacks, and +2 strength to his shooting attacks as well, making his Bolt of Change 24 inches, strength 12, and his Rod of Sorcery, because again, you always hit the Rod of Sorcery over the sword generally as your option, 18 inches, strength 11. So he's one of our most or more consistent shooting platform, which we don't have a lot of. We are very combat based, but he's a pretty good shooting platform. He can definitely underperform because you're relying on basically rolling your sustained D3 on your Bolt of Tzeentch, which is the ability you generally will always pick. But at the same time, I've had him kill Catan in one go. I've had him pick up units that are generally quite tough in one go. Like, this guy can absolutely throw nukes, but then he can also throw wet blankets. So, and then Flamers and Screamers, we've already spoken about them. Great scoring units. One unit we didn't include on here, and I'm going to talk about, is also the Changeling for Tzeentch. He's a lone up. He's really, really good. Like with the mask, we've already spoken about him in our lone up focus, so go check that out. But you know, every time he gets targeted, shooting or combat, your opponent has to take a battle shock test. He's very good at holding your battlefield objective. So when your opponent comes into your deployment zone or lands in your deployment zone, there will always be -1 to that battle shock test because they're in your army Shadow of Chaos. If they fail, they can't target him. At the start of your opponent's shooting phase, he picks an enemy unit within 12 inches invisible to him. And if you roll a 2 to 5, that unit will be -1 to hit. If you roll a 6, that unit cannot shoot, which is just really, really good. Yeah, the Changeling is just a fantastic utility and defensive piece to have. And being lone up as well, he can only be targeted by shooting attacks within 12 inches, meaning he's generally quite safe from long range. So, that is kind of a generalization of how to get into the faction, going into and talking about, you know, a lot of the units, some key units, and probably some of the best ways to start. You know, like we said, the combat patrol is pretty good if you want to kind of go down the corn route, or if you don't really mind what god you start with. But then if you kind of do care about what god you start with, going with the greater demon, going with the troop choice, going with some of the extra units is a good way to start as well. But yeah, and then all I can recommend is when you start with the faction, if you are not just picking up to play it competitively at events, but also play casually or just in general as a project, have fun with it. Play to the theme you want to, play to the playstyle you want to. If you love the big smashing monsters, go nuts. If you love your loads of little unique style units, fiends and screamers and blood crushers, or if you really like your cavalry, blood crushers and seekers and stuff like that, just, you know, build towards it. Like, demons are such a fun army to play in general. Maybe if you're like me and you only play that one faction and you play it pretty much week in, week out, it gets a little bit stale. But what are you gonna do when you love something a lot and you kind of narrow yourself into that one niche? You deal with it. But yeah, so hopefully this has been helpful. This has hopefully pushed you in a direction and helped you. If you were stuck, or if you just in general were just curious in how to kind of start with demons. And I generally recommend checking out all the content that we do, because we do everything to help out new and veteran demon players alike, whether it be tactics and tips, some basic, some more advanced. Talking about my own tournament endeavors, we play tournaments almost weekly. We are slowing down a little bit, but we do have the World Championships in Atlanta in less than 2 weeks now. Probably posting of this video, I don't know when this is going to go up. It's probably going to go up this week, so in just under 2 weeks now. So we talk about all that kind of stuff, and we go deep dive into our game, so you will get some stuff from that as well. And also we just give general tips and talking about demons, because it's what I love to do, and it's what the channel is here for. It's to help out all my fellow denizens of the warp. So thank you for tuning in, and again, if you like the content, leave a like, subscribe to keep up to date with everything, and if you really like the content and you want to get some extra benefits, consider becoming a true denizen. And then keep up to date with Facebook and Instagram, where you can follow everything True Demon Lord, from channel uploads as well as my own, events, competitive play, all that kind of stuff. So thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you all in the next one.